Hey guys, this is Malagos. Even though 2.6.2 has been a pretty weak Star Citizen patch, there was one improvement from 2.6.1. CIG actually implemented a fix for the AC leaderboard algorithm. Anyone that's looked at the leaderboards since they came out in 0.9, which is late summer 2014, which is about 3 years ago from now, anyone who's looked at them has noticed that they don't really make a ton of sense. What you're looking at here is from 0.91, where I have the highest or second highest stat across the board, at least of the ones listed. First score per minute, second in score, overall score, second in damage ratio, first in kill death ratio, second in overall playtime. So despite having all these, first and seconds, I'm not even, well, I guess I am in 10th place. I think what has happened since is people have actually hidden themselves from the leaderboard. But to me, that's kind of a questionable thing. Like, what is happening here? Actually, another thing is a lot of the names on here are no longer playing, and maybe that's another thing that CIG should be asking themselves about how the AC play experience is going when people that have been around 3 years ago, like I almost see none of these guys. Anyway, that's completely beside the point. So since this point, at least, I've been trying to get CIG to tell us how the rating system works so that we can fix it, because in my opinion, it was broken. Or at least we can design it in a way that it's useful as a way of tracking stats and progress and things like that. So we can, I think I've had previous videos where I've been looking at stats and things from AC as a way of balancing things in the PU. And I'm gonna get a lot of hate just for saying that, but it's a complicated argument. So anyway, without any response from CIG, I started to reverse the system by myself. And I've been collecting leaderboard stats after every single squad battle match, starting in 2.6.1 and now through 2.6.2/3. The whole idea there being I can look at the stats after each match and kind of figure out what the stats were per match. And this sounds kind of tedious and a little bit, extreme and a little bit crazy, and it's probably true. But I actually was able to create a script to do it in a single button press, so it's not a pain at all for me. And I'll talk about that more at the end. What you're looking at here is the 2.6.1 data. CIG actually labels their leaderboards, or excuse me, their seasons with the number, and 2.6.1 is 18, so that's what we're looking at here. These are the stats after each match. This is the delta for each match. You can see the stats that I got, match 1, match 2. Now, I started this one a little bit late for 2.6.1. I think I was about 6 hours in before I got the impetus to actually implement it. But that's fine. There's a lot of movement under about 3 hours or so. Anyway, if you go back to the leaderboard, we see these stats that CIG shows us: score per minute, damage ratio, KDR. You would kind of think those things would be important, and that's what I thought, and I was wrong. Score per minute and damage ratio are actually negatively correlated with rating per match. KDR is, more or less flat. That tells us a couple things. First of all, these stats are clearly not used to calculate your rating. They have nothing to do with it. Second, the fact that they're negatively correlated gives us a clue about what was actually important, and that is the amount of time that each match went, or the amount of time that you were in each match. In 2.6.1, the correlation here is extremely tight, which is kind of crazy. Even more so than your overall score or anything else, your score per minute. Well, obviously not that, but your total score. The variation here, you're going to kind of see, I've learned that the longer you fly, the less rating you get per match. So there's kind of like that's why you see drops in there. There could also be differences in performance match to match. But overall, the correlation is pretty good with the most important thing is how long that game went and how long you were in that game. So the result of that is pretty clear. You get punished for joining a match that was almost over, right? You just spawn in 10 seconds and it's done. Goodbye, 60, 100 points. That sucks. And that kind of makes you not want to join games. You can even get punished for winning too quickly, and I assume that's what a lot of these ones are. Again, something that makes you gives you really strange strategies. So the reason why KDR and damage ratio were actually negative is that I would go into a match that was about to end. I'd get a few kills, or I wouldn't take any damage, and the match would end. So I get these amazing ratios. I'd go up in every single stat that was listed, but my rating would tank. So this has been going on for 2.5 years until it was finally fixed. And even though I didn't have hard data like I do now, the players that pay attention were aware of this. And one of the strategies that would be developed is when I was about to win, when I was on the final kill and the game was going to end earlier than I wanted it to hurt my rating, I would go sit behind a rock and just let the clock run down. That's not great gameplay, and that's the kind of stuff that happens when you hide how your game works. Something is broken and none of the employees have a clue. Some players kind of pick up on it, and they either have to conform to the craziness of it, and I guess they do, and then they kind of might ruin the experience for other people or themselves. So this is one of my arguments for why the underlying mechanics and algorithms, that make the game work, should not be secrets. And I've been kind of talking about this for years on the forums and whatnot. And of course, players are like, "Oh, who cares about AC? That's not, except that you should be using the gameplay there to kind of divvy out roles for the actual PU and whatnot. But it's another video. Finally, a turbulent employee acknowledged that the algorithm was bugged around match time, and they fixed it in 2.6.2. That's where we are right now. So let's look at that, at least for Squad Battle, which is the only game mode I play anymore. And you can see that 5 players have hit the maximum rating, which is 10,000 rating. So if you go back to the data, this time I started grabbing it right from the start. And the results of the fix are immediately obvious. Rating doesn't just get nuked, just because matches are shorter. It's not exactly flat. You still need matches to have some time so you can actually do things in them. But we can see that KDR has nothing to do with anything. Not important at all. Excuse me, damage ratio has nothing to do with it. KDR, I think there's a correlation here, but I think that's kind of a side effect of score. And that's kind of what comes into focus here. We can see what data is, what ratings are actually important. Score per minute and overall score, obviously. And that kind of makes sense because there's a reason that the game mode has points. That's what it's tracking. That is the single most important stat in these matches. And that leaves us with a couple primary theories. One is that your rating isn't derived from your stats as you see them on the leaderboard. And that's kind of what I currently believe. If you look at the score per minute chart, that means you can gain rating, as long as you're above the 0 line, and that's kind of the breaking point is around 2,000 points per minute. Now keep in mind that you don't gain as much rating the longer you fly. I kind of said this earlier. So there might be a point where it's just not possible to get any more rating if you're, 2,000 points per minute. But at the same time, there is a problem. The primary problem with my theory is that it's not accounting for everything. This correlation is not perfect. And so this X factor kind of puts a little bit of a hole in my theory. Now I have another theory for what that X factor is, and I've noticed that a lot of times in games I'll have a relatively poor score per minute, but I'll get a higher rating, and vice versa. I'll do amazing, but I won't get anything. Anecdotally, I believe what's the difference here is who I was flying against. So if I'm doing amazing stat-wise, 20 kills, 1 death, or whatever, it's against a bunch of guys who might not be very good. Conversely, I'm doing poorly and getting, I'm going against a team that's pretty good. Now what happens is I'll go against a team that's really good and I'll still get tons of rating back. And so I think that's what it is. I do screenshot the end of every match, the results of every match. So like I could go back and do that, but that's way too much work. And CIG should really just kind of come out and tell us how this works. There's no reason why it should be hidden, especially 2.5 years ago. It just doesn't make any sense at all to me. The other theory, and it's not a bad theory, it was actually introduced to me by a loser kid, is that you need about 2,500 score per minute and at least 17 hours of play time to get 10,000 rating. And that's kind of the secret here, I guess. This holds up for every data point that we have in 262. You know, that's kind of eerily good at that because there's no player that has over 2,500 points but less than 17 hours. That's in the 10K count. So that does make sense. I don't know how that is explained, with the data that I collect per match and how much rating you get for that. And there's also just not a lot of data for that. So I guess the reality here is we can make kind of these general statements, but we still don't know exactly how everything works. It'd be great if CIG would just do the right thing, listen to their player base and tell us, but we certainly can't really count on that. So if anyone is interested in collecting their stats, I do have a modified script that they can run if they're able to run Python scripts. It's not super difficult. Just I'll have the Discord information below. You can contact me and I'll help you set that up. But I think we're going to have to rely on the players here to fix CIG's problem. A lot of times we will bring, a big problem, or actually more like 10 or so problems CIG at once. You might get one fixed back. And even though this would be extremely easy to fix, I don't really have a lot of confidence that CIG will do it, even though they are hemorrhaging active players, I guess. Like, do you see any of these guys anymore? It's kind of sad. Anyway, that's my theory in Leaderboard and how to collect your information, collect the information. So see you guys.